Oh, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? That's awkward because I've been talking for quite a bit. Yeah. Meta, can you hear me? Hello. Hello. Is there anyone out there? Oop. Can you guys hear me? Hello. Matt, hello. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Oh, thank you. Could have told me that earlier. Been going for like 8 minutes now. Alright, well, I just read 2 poems, but nobody heard me. So that's awkward. This is good though, because now I can start over. Hello and welcome to Park Bench Poetry. We're gonna do things a little different. I'm here without Sam. She's at home sick, and she needs her rest. So I'm gonna read from one of my favorite books of poems. It's called Love is a Dog from Hell by Charles Bukowski. And I found this book while I was in Denver, and my girlfriend and I were wandering around the bookstore, and I was looking through the poetry section as usual. And how I usually pick a book, because I'd never heard of Charles Bukowski before, even though he is an older poet and renowned. I was going through the section and I saw this one book, and the title, Love is a Dog from Hell, really caught my eye. So I started reading it, and his poems are so different than everybody else's. They'll spark emotion, and some of it's disgust, and some of it's love, and some of it's hate, and some of it will make you laugh. But regardless, it's entertaining nonetheless. So I'm going to read a couple poems out of here and dissect a little bit. So Charles Bukowski, he's an American German writer, and he was actually sent over here. His mother sent him over by ship. I forget in what year, but he's been writing poetry since he was about 16 years old. And he's no longer alive with us today. But this book of poetry is from 1974 to 77 he put together. And I wonder if there's like a little biography on him. Yes. Charles Bukowski, one of America's best-known contemporary writers of poetry and prose, and many would claim him as the most influential and imitated poet. He was born in Germany to an American soldier father and a German mother in 1920 and brought to the U.S. at the age of 3. He was raised in Los Angeles and lived there for 50 years. He published his first story in 1944 when he was 24 and began writing poetry at the age of 35. He died in San Pedro, California, 1994 at the age of 73, shortly after completing his last novel. He also published more than 45 books of poetry and prose in his lifetime. All of his books have now been published in translation in more than a dozen languages, and his worldwide popularity remains undiminished in the years to come. And then additional volumes of previously uncollected poetry will also be published, including his letters. And this guy, like, he looks like he had a rough life. If you look him up, he's got the patches of hair and he's got the whole beard mustache thing, and he's like, in the back of this book, he's leaning against the wall. And he reminds me a lot of Hemingway, in the fact where you could tell he's had a rough life, and it shows in his poetry. So a lot of this book is mostly him with his women. he had a few loves. He had booze and he had his women. So I'm going to start with the first poem out of this book, and it's called Sandra. And the first chapter is called One More Creature Dizzy with Love, talking about himself. So he did love. It just sounded like he couldn't quite get the version he wanted. So he slept with a bunch of ladies. So this poem is entitled Sandra. Is the slim, tall, ear-ringed bedroom damsel dressed in a long gown. She's always high in heels, spirit, pills, booze. Sandra leans out of her chair, leans towards Glendale. I wait for her head to hit the closet doorknob as she attempts to light a new cigarette on an almost burnt-out one. At 32, she likes young, neat, unscratched boys with faces like the bottoms of new saucers. She has proclaimed as much to me, has brought her prizes over for me to view. Silent blonde zeros of young flesh, who, A, sit, B, stand, C, talk, at her command. Sometimes she brings one, sometimes two, sometimes three, for me to view. Sandra looks very good in long gowns. Sandra could probably break a man's heart. I hope she finds one. And that was Sandra by Charles Bukowski. So if you go through the poem, he's talking about his lover, or a lover. And, he's musing at her. And he's talking about, slim, tall, ear-ringed bedroom damsel dressed in a long gown, this little beauty. And then he starts going, she's always high, pause, in heels, spirits, pills, and booze. So she's a little out of it. And then he says, I wait for her head to hit the closet doorknob. So she's stumbling around the place. Yeah, she attempts to light a new cigarette. And then I guess, she's 32 and sounds like she's a cougar. Yeah, she drunk wasted. And she's a cougar, and she brings these boys around who just do everything she wants, and she loves it. She loves commanding them everywhere, and he likes to watch that. And then he says, he's like, that's great for her. I hope she finds a heart to break, because it wasn't his. That's pretty much what he said towards the end. So that's a little taste of Charles. Some of the poems are a lot worse than this. So this next one, I'm just reading the second one out of the book. And this one's called You. You're a beast, she said. Your big white belly and those hairy feet. You never cut your nails, and you have fat hands, paws like a cat. Your bright red nose and the biggest balls I've ever seen. You shoot sperm like a whale shoots water out of the hole in its back. Beast, beast, beast. She kissed me. What do you want for breakfast? That was entitled You, again by Charles Bukowski. And And yes, it's a little graphic, but it makes so much sense to me. Just because you can love somebody, right? But you can also see all their flaws, right? But you still love them for their flaws anyway when you really love somebody. So I love that she's saying all these nasty things to him and saying how gross and nasty he is. And then she kisses him and she goes, "What do you want for breakfast?" Because in the end, she's still going to make him breakfast. So again, a little insight into Charles. And I love how short it is and how impactful it is. Yeah, it could be unconditional love. It could just be she'd like to get laid again another night. So let's see. And I love like some of his titles too, like the 6-foot goddess. This is a whole title. I've seen too many glazed-eyed bums sitting under a bridge drinking cheap wine. Here's one entitled Sex Pot. We're going to read this one. This is a good one. I'm saving one for the next stream with Sam. That one's going to be titled Loved and Lost, and there's a beautiful poem in here about his ex-wife that he obviously regrets leaving. All right, so this poem is entitled Sex Pot. "You know," she said, "you were at the bar, so you didn't see. But I danced with this guy. We danced and we danced close. But I didn't go home with him because he knew I was with you." "Thanks a bunch," I said. She was always thinking of sex. She carried it around with her like something in a paper bag. Such energy. She never forgot. She stared at every man available in morning cafes, over bacon and eggs, or later over a noon sandwich or a steak dinner. "I've modeled myself after Marilyn Monroe," she told me. "She's always running off to some local disco to dance with a baboon. A friend once told me, 'I'm amazed that you've stood for it as long as you have.' She'd vanish at racetracks, then come back and say, 'Three men offered to buy me a drink.' Or I'd lose her in the parking lot and I'd look up and she'd be walking along with a strange man. 'Well, he came from this direction and I came from that and we kind of walked together. I didn't want to hurt his feelings.' She said that I was a very jealous man. One day she just fell down inside of her sexual organs and vanished. It was like an alarm clock dropping into the Grand Canyon. It begged and rattled and rang, but I could no longer see or hear it. I'm feeling much better now. I've taken up tap dancing and I wear a black felt hat pulled down low over my right eye." And that was called Sex Pot. So obviously the sex pot is she. And she likes to flaunt herself and she likes making her lover jealous. And then she goes to say how jealous that he's a very jealous man when she goes about flaunting and trying to get the attention from all these other men. And I'm sure we've all related to this in some way, maybe trying to get the attention of somebody we like by doing so, and maybe you like flirt with someone you're really not interested in at all, but you're hoping somebody watches you. But she just sounds like a kick to the to the nethers. And again, someone who it looks like he didn't stay long with. And he's like, "I'm feeling much better now. I've taken up tap dancing." So good. I could go on with Charles Bukowski. He cracks me up. And I haven't finished the whole book. God. But every time I go through it, I find a new one that cracks me up. So, for example, here's another one that's entitled "Numb Your Ass, Your Brain, and Your Heart." Just numb it all. Okay, this is a good one. All right, this one's entitled "One of the Hottest." She wore a platinum blonde wig, and her face was rough and powdered. She wore a platinum blonde wig, and her face was rouged and powdered, and she put the lipstick on, making a huge painted mouth. And her neck was wrinkled, but she still had the ass of a young girl, and the legs were good. She wore blue panties, and I got them off, raised her dress, and with the TV flickering, I took her standing up. As we struggled around the room, I'm fucking the grave, I thought. I'm bringing the dead back to life. Marvelous, so marvelous. Like eating cold olives at 3 a.m. with half the town on fire. You boys can keep your virgins. Give me hot old women in high heels with asses that forgot to get old. Of course you leave afterwards, or get very drunk, which is the same thing. We drank wine for hours and watched TV, and when we went to bed to sleep it off, she left her teeth in all night long. Like, he published these, okay? I am reading directly out of a book, and yes, I stumbled on a few words, but it is a little, like, poetic porn. But I like how he's now talking about, like, an older woman. Like, you boys can keep your virgins. Give me a hot old woman in high heels. That asses that forgot to get old. He's very blunt. And then, on that note, like, I want to find one that's a little more calm. Your poems about the girls will still be around 50 years from now. When the girls are gone, my editor phones me. Let's go to the next chapter. I think it has a different theme. Yeah, this one's all about what he wants to do to everybody. And I love how he doesn't have a rhyme or reason to the way he writes. He just kind of went for it. Like, there's no rhyme scheme for most of them. But a few of these are actually very beautiful if I could find one. Every poem has woman in it. This one's kind of cute. Well, kind of. It's like ugly cute. This one's called "It's the Way You Play the Game." Call it love. Stand it up in the falling light. Put it in a dress. Pray, sing, beg, cry, laugh. Turn off the lights. Turn on the radio. Add trimmings. Butter. Raw eggs. Yesterday's new paper. One new shoelace. Then add paprika, sugar, salt, pepper. Phone your drunken aunt. Call it love. You skewer it good, add cabbage and applesauce, then heat it from the left side, then heat it from the right side. Put it in a box, give it away, leave it on a doorstep, vomiting as you go into the hydrangea. So he does this recipe for love, and then at the end he's like, You threw it up. Which actually makes perfect sense to me. Okay. Alright, this one's titled, How Come You're Not Unlisted? The men phone and ask me that. Are you really Charles Bukowski, the writer? They ask. I'm sometimes a writer, I say. Most often I don't do anything. Listen, they ask. I like your stuff. Do you mind if I come over and bring a couple of six-packs? You can bring them, I say, if you don't come in. When the women phone, I say, oh yes, I write. I'm a writer. Only I'm not writing right now. I feel foolish phoning you, they say, and I was surprised to find you listed in the phone book. I have reasons, I say. By the way, don't you come over for a beer? You wouldn't mind? And they arrive, handsome women, good of mind and body and eye. Often there isn't sex, but I'm used to that, yet it's good, very good, just to look at them. And some rare times I have expected good luck otherwise. For a man of 55 who didn't get laid until he was 23, and not very often until he was 50, I think that I should stay listed via Pacific Telephone until I get as much as the average man has had. Of course, I'll have to keep writing immortal poems, but the inspiration is there. So, that was him talking about, when the guy's phone, he's like, yeah, play it this way, and then when the women call, he plays it a different way. Yeah, so a lot of his stuff, again, talking about like drugs, alcohol, sex. Here's a line that says rape 5 times in all caps. Okay, this one's titled, A Horse with Green-Blue Eyes. What you see is what you see. Madhouses are rarely on display. That we still walk about and scratch ourselves and light cigarettes is more the miracle than bathing beauties, than roses and the moth. To sit in a small room and drink a can of beer and roll a cigarette while listening to Brahms on small red radio is to have come back from a dozen wars alive, listening to the sound of the refrigerator as bathing beauties rot and the orange and apples roll away. Well, I guess he meant a woman when he meant a horse with green blue eyes. So sweet of him. Well. Oh, God. I can't read that one. Alright, this one's about, I think, a brown-eyed girl. Let's try it. This one's entitled Light Brown. Light brown stare. That dumb, blank, marvelous light brown stare. I'll take care of it. You needn't carry me anymore with your Cleopatra movie star tricks. Do you realize that if I were an adding machine, I might break down tabulating how many times you've used that light brown stare? Not that you're not the best with your light brown stare. Someday some crazy son of a bitch is going to murder you, and you'll cry out my name. You'll finally know what you should have known so very long ago. That took a little turn towards the end, I think. He's talking about how beautiful the light brown stare is, and then he's like, someone will murder you, and you'll cry out my name. Waving and waving goodbye. A killer. Oh, this is like a man-eater. Alright, consistency. This one's called A Killer. consistency is terrific. Shark mouth, grubby interior, with an almost perfect body, long blazing hair, it confuses me and others. She runs from man to man offering endearments. She speaks of love, then breaks each man to her will. Shark mouth, grubby interior. We see it too late. After it gets swallowed, and the heart follows, her long blazing hair, her almost perfect body walks down the street as the same sun falls upon flowers. I had to skip a word in there. Alright, last one. Let's see, I'm just going to go to a random. Oh, okay. Here's the poem, good way to finish, called Love is a Dog from Hell. See, are there any curse words in here? Alright, not that I could skim. Alright, last one. Love is a dog from hell. Feet of cheese, coffee pot sole, hands that hate pool sticks, eyes like paper clips. I prefer red wine. I am bored on airliners. I am docile during earthquakes. I am sleepy at funerals. I puke at parades, and am sacrificial at chess. And kind and caring, I smell urine in churches. I can no longer read. I can no longer sleep. Eyes like paper clips, my green eyes. I prefer white wine. My box of rubbers is getting stale. I take them out. Trojan ends, lubricated, for greater sensitivity. I take them out and put 3 of them on. The walls of my bedroom are blue. Linda, where did you go? Catherine, where did you go? And Nina went to England. I have toenail clippers and Windex glass cleaner. Green eyes, blue bedroom, bright machine gun sun. This whole thing is like a seal caught in oily rocks, encircled by the Long Beach marching band at 3:36 p.m. There is a ticking behind me, but no clock. I feel something crawling along the left side of my nose. Memories of airliners. My mother had false teeth. My father had false teeth. And every Saturday of their lives they took up all the rugs in their house, waxed the hardwood floors, and covered them with rugs again. And Nina is in England, and Irene is on ATD, and I take my green eyes, and I lay down in my blue bedroom. So this one actually stumps me a little bit. It's almost like he's laying in bed and he's just like listing a bunch of stuff, like, oh, I got my condoms on the table, I like red wine, oh. And eyes like paper clips. That's a simile that I don't quite understand. He sounds bored is what it sounds like. He's very bored. And I'd say that was accurate. Usually people who are of high intelligence get pretty bored fairly quickly. Then he's pondering to himself, like, where'd all these women go? I'm here by myself. There's ticking behind you, but no clock. So time's passing him by. Bright machine gun sun. I like that. Machine gun sun. Kind of really rocks. So yeah, that's Charles Bukowski. A blunt mother trucker. Again, Love is a Dog from Hell is the name of the poetry book. If you're interested in reading more of his stuff, I'll probably pick out less vile things for the physical podcast, or try to edit a few out as well. If you have anything that you would like me to read, feel free to send anything in my, whisper to me in my DMs, and I'd be happy to include it into the poetry podcast. I will eventually also be doing a couple interviews. I have a few friends who have written poetry books of their own, One woman, her name is Star Sanders, and she has done a compilation of poems that all begin with I am, and this is her first volume. And she loves poetry, and she's very empowered, and her collection of poems are very, very strong, the strong picks. So I'll be making sure to include her and hopefully get her on an interview at some point to go over the poem, why she picked the poem she did. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard. I hope you enjoyed Charles Bukowski as much as I do. Usually that's stuff I read, by myself at home. But everybody have a good night or good morning wherever you are. And thank you for listening to